growing up evangelical, right? You've got pre, post, and amillennial. So going into the nuances and debating where you stand on that, and who's right and who's wrong, and all of those types of conversations were always fun, in quotation marks, right?
It's so funny because it's like
ruining friendships.
With talking about that stuff, like having hour-long conversations, whether you're like pre-trib, post-trib, millennial, pre-millennial, post-millennial, and you get into it, and then you're like, you realize that you were just playing Dungeons and Dragons, basically. Like, you spent hours having conversations about something that doesn't exist.
Oh, that is so
but
funny.
with your entire personality.
Yeah, the core of your being, right? Like you are 100% raptured up in this topic.
Just like roll your 42-sided die and like, oh, behold the pale horse.
The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are upon us. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam.
I'm Casey.
I'm Jeremiah.
And I want to ask you guys how you feel about self-care, and if that's something that you put a lot of focus on in your lives.
Self-care like I use moisturizer every once in a while?
Sure.
Or like self-care like I'm insufferable to be around and I don't get anything done because I'm having a me weekend?
Yeah, well, only you can...
That, but with moisturizer on top.
Oh my God. Well, only you can decide what self-care means to you. It could be just the stroking of your narcissistic personality disorder, but it could just be, taking a shower because it's been a week. It's really in the eye of the beholder.
Okay.
It's a term that's best used for getting out of things that you said you would do.
Yeah.
It's like that's when people bust out the term self-care, is when they're like, I told you I would go to dinner, but I'm having a rough week. I need some self-care.
I need to drink
I'm going to watch Netflix
and snort a Xanax.
I'm going to eat pizza rolls like halfway cooked because I can't wait that long, and they're going to be cold and chewy in the middle.
Yeah, and you'd rather a frosty center than just burning the taste buds off your tongue anyway. But how is that self-care?
Yeah.
Well,
you got to make that face where you go.
Yeah.
Listeners, be glad that you don't have to see what's going on right now. It's not pretty.
It's like the violent inhale to keep that pizza roll floating in just keep it in suspension in your mouth so it doesn't touch any surfaces.
It's like a soccer player, or like that Tiger Woods commercial where he bounces the golf ball on the club, like
right after he crashes his car into a local strip club. I can't remember what the commercial was.
What a turbulent life that guy has.
Yeah. I mean, is there anyone in the sport of golf that lives harder than Tiger Woods? I mean,
it's not really a sport that attracts a lot of hard-living dudes.
Yeah.
What is it, John Daly? That's like type. John Daly's like the big fat, like John Madden looking dude that
with the Hawaiian shirts that became a meme. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of interesting, but like, how many others are there? Or how everyone else is just wearing neutral colored, like Lululemon slacks and golf shirts. Like it
looks like the
pretty much the rest of the sport.
Dude, Hawaiian shirts are self-care.
Yeah.
Like that's when you've achieved like that's a high level self-care where you're like, I care about, I'm worried first and foremost about me and what I need. And what I need right now is for my gut not to be restricted by a tucked in shirt or a fitted t-shirt. I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah. It's just the total.
So Sam.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was going to say, where's this going with the self-care thing? Because I feel like I don't want to commit to too much until I know what you mean by self-care.
Well, I just wanted to share a story with you guys about last weekend, my son, who's 5, it was Saturday morning. It was about 7:30. He came into my room, or maybe he came in my room that night, but he woke up around 7:30 and he's like, can I take a bath? I was like, all right, yeah. If that's what you want to do first thing in the morning on a Saturday, we'll get up, we'll take a bath. So get him all ready, get the water filled. He gets in the tub and he's like, could I have candles? I was like, candles? What? He's like, yeah. I was like, you want candles while you take a bath? He's like, yeah, yeah. So I find like 3 candles around, and they come with a set. And I thought there was only 3 to the set. So I put them in the bathroom, one on the counter, one on the back of the toilet, one on the windowsill, and light them all. He's like, where's the other one? And I was like, there's only 3 in the set. He goes, no, there's 4. I was like, well, I don't know where it is. He's like, I want 4 candles. I was like, you get 3. You're lucky you have candles, dude. I just lit candles for you at 7:30 in the morning so you can take a bath, and you're 5. So you're lucky you have candles. So I start walking. I go out. Then he yells for me. I hear him yelling, Dad. So I come back in and I was like, what's up? And he goes, you forgot to turn the lights off and close the shade. I was like, oh my God, this kid. He stayed in there for probably 45 minutes, just chilling in the tub with his candles going and the lights off. He looked like he knew how to live his best life, and I'm still struggling to figure out how to do that. So I have a lot of respect for him and his ability to advocate
he's like really
and well-being.
Yeah, he's really channeling his like wine mom energy. Like when he laid back in the tub, was he like, what a week?
Yeah. He's like, let me tell you about my friend from school. This kid, too much. Oh my God. And he just went on. He went on and on, dished about all the drama in his kindergarten class.
Where do you think he saw that? Because he saw that somewhere, and he's like, "Yep, that's me."
I don't know. I don't know if it was like something that my wife had mentioned. We don't take baths. We don't have like a nice kind of tub that you'd take. Well, you have a nice tub that you'd take a bath in, and you filled it with plants like a weirdo. So, but we don't have it. We just have like the shitty tubs that, the kind that you eventually remodel when you have more money later in life. So so he doesn't see it from us. He doesn't like walk in and see us like chilling, taking baths with candles. And so I don't know. I don't really know where it came from.
How much media can he be consuming? Like where else could he be getting that from?
I don't know. I loved it though. It was just like, I kept going in. I was like, are you good? And he's like, yeah. He's like, hey, look at my toes. They're super wrinkly. I'm like, that's cool, man. It's like,
now was he like chill the rest of the day? Like, did you see positive benefits?
He's pretty chill anyway. My kids are so easygoing, but I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was the cutest thing ever. And I thought it was also hilarious that that's how he wanted to spend his Saturday morning. So
good for him.
Adorable.
Yeah. But on to the topic of tonight. We don't have a ton of time to cover it, so we got to get into it as fast as possible. Casey, your boy, got indicted. And I know you have a lot of feelings about that. So I figured us 3 uneducated on the law and the rules of indictment. That's how you call it, right? The rules of indictment.
I mean, the rules of engagement is a thing. I've never heard of rules of indictment.
It's also a thing. Okay. So we'll.
Okay.
All right. It's like bird law.
Yeah. But yeah. So
I don't know. Uncle Donnie. Dude, everybody's out to get him.
Where is he staying right now? Is he under just
not in Florida? DeSantis, Meatball Ron invited him down to Florida, and because he said Florida doesn't extradite, which would be really entertaining to watch because they hate each other. But I'm pretty sure Trump was just staying in New York during that time.
Wouldn't it be great if like he invited him down there, but in order to keep him from being extradited, like he had to share a bedroom with DeSantis?
Or DeSantis locked him up. He's like, I'll let you out after the election.
Yeah. He just waits till he gets to the border and he pushes him over it and the cops arrest him anyway.
That would be entertaining.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm imagining someone is pretend wealthy and white as Trump doesn't spend he's not going to spend a night in jail or anything like that.
Yeah, probably not. Want me to explain really quick what's going on, just in case anyone doesn't know?
Yeah. Just in case there's one person out there who doesn't know.
Well, the details of exactly what he's theoretically being charged with, because I think the indictment's still sealed as of when we're recording this. So the actual details might be more complicated. I think everybody knows supposedly Trump paid hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, a porn star he supposedly cheated on his wife with.
Right, which isn't so in and of itself necessarily a crime. So it's more about the nuances around that, correct?
Correct, yes. So
luckily that's not a crime, or else we wouldn't
have politicians.
Would we ever find a president?
That's fair. So supposedly what happened is Stormy Daniels' representatives contacted the National Enquirer to offer exclusive rights to her story shortly before the 2016 election. David Pecker, the tabloid's publisher and longtime ally of Mr. Trump, had agreed to look out for potentially damaging stories about him during the 2016 campaign, and at one point even agreed to buy the story of another woman's affair with Trump and never publish it, which they call a catch and kill. I'm referencing some stuff from the New York Times for this.
Good looking out, Pecker.
Exactly. So Mr. Pecker didn't purchase her story. Instead, he and the tabloid's editor, Dylan Howard, connected her with Michael Cohen, not Trump's lawyer at the time. That part's important. Just Trump's fixer guy. And Michael Cohen was a lawyer. I'm pretty sure he's been disbarred. But at the time, he was not serving as Trump's lawyer. So they negotiated hush money for this story because this was shortly before the 2016 election. I guess at the time they thought that there was anything that would make people not vote for Trump potentially, and this was a bad thing.
Yeah,
this is after the Access Hollywood.
It was
right. This is after the Access Hollywood tape
on Main Street. Sorry, we just cutting each other off right there.
It's all right. I think I think your internet sucks tonight. Sorry, or at least I see Casey fine, but you keep freezing up for a couple seconds.
Okay.
So Mr. Cohen paid Stormy Daniels' representatives $130,000, and then Trump reimbursed him once he was in the White House, or reimbursed him. So in 2018, Michael Cohen pled guilty to a bunch of charges, including federal campaign finance crimes involving the hush money. The federal prosecutors concluded that amounted to an improper donation to Mr. Trump's campaign because it was to purchase something that directly benefited the campaign.
Okay. Yep.
So when he was pleading guilty, Michael Cohen pointed the finger at Trump and said Trump directed him to pay off Stormy Daniels, a contention that prosecutors later corroborated. So that also raised questions about Trump's monthly reimbursement checks to Mr. Cohen, because they're like, what else are these for?
Yeah.
So in court papers, they said that Trump's company or his campaign falsely accounted for the monthly payments as legal expenses, and they cited a retainer agreement with Mr. Cohen. So Michael Cohen was a lawyer, and he became Trump's attorney after he took office. There was not a retainer agreement, and the reimbursements could not have been for legal services because Michael Cohen wasn't officially rendering legal services. So falsifying business records like that is a crime, but that's a misdemeanor. So to elevate it to a felony charge, they're going to have to demonstrate that Trump's intent to defraud included an intent to commit or conceal a second crime.
Yeah, so, it's like federal racketeering charge is what
basically,
they're getting.
Yeah, it's a violation of election law. Hush money is not inherently illegal. The prosecutors will probably argue that the payout became an improper donation to the campaign because it benefited the campaign, which I think the first time you read it, you're like, improper donation to a campaign, that seems a little thin because it didn't go to the campaign. But then you think about it a little bit like, okay, I get what you're saying. You're buying services for the campaign. The services just happens to be killing a damaging story. What's the difference between that and spending money on an ad? They're kind of trying to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah. And it sounds like there was 34. I saw something that was 34 other charges indicted on. And
yeah, I don't know if we know exactly how many there are, but there's a bunch. It's definitely, it can't just be this misdemeanor and one felony. It's got to be a bunch of other things, which of course that's a pretty common thing to do, is to try to see how many things you can stack on there so that you can try to get a conviction on one of them, even if you can't get a conviction on the main one that you want.
Yeah. This whole thing is like a shoddily constructed legal Rube Goldberg machine.
A little bit. Yeah.
It feels just like, I don't know. I feel like kind of teetering between a couple different viewpoints on it, but I think it's frustrating to even bother thinking about. It's like now this is going to occupy all news stories entirely for a while. It's going to just be what there is to talk about, and we've already seen. I don't know. president or not, like we just see like these wealthy businessmen, they operate with impunity essentially. No one else would get, or they would rarely get slapped with a charge like this. And if they do, they just shrug it off and it's fine because these don't necessarily carry jail time. And based on what this sounds like, there's nothing severe enough that would ever, I mean, it's rare that anyone in a suit sees the inside of a jail cell anyway. So in a situation like this, it's like
Michael Cohen did.
Yeah,
it's true.
Sure did. But I don't know. You're just like, what are we doing? Like, I get it. You want to hold people accountable. And that's what I feel like one side is.
Some
like,
people.
You want to hold people accountable and you want to say, look, this is like the law applies equally, but we want to only say that in situations that are more like this because no one's making these arguments on a daily basis for all the other white collar crimes out there. It's just because of who this guy is.
Right. And I think the argument of it's because of who he is valid. Like somebody who,
yes.
if some guy did this just to get a higher board seat at a company, like, you know, you would disapprove of him doing it, but you wouldn't really care beyond that. But if somebody theoretically used this to like swindle their way into the presidency, we should theoretically care a lot more. Now, I don't think this would have made or broken Trump's campaign. Like, I think at that point, if anyone didn't leave after the Access Hollywood thing, I don't think this would do anything to it either. Like, I don't think it's really a secret that Trump has cheated on all of his wives. So, you know,
and there's people who just want to believe that she's lying or everyone else is lying, and they'll just he has like a solid percent of his base is just going to tell themselves whatever they want to believe about him. That's why they can think he's like a savior type and even compare him to Jesus. It's like, you can't really do that unless you like live in fantasy land.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I think Casey, we got the impression.
Prosecuted.
Oh, sorry. We're cutting into each other again. Maybe it's Zencaster tonight.
I
was going to say, I got the impression over text message that you and I don't agree on this. So yeah, I'm really curious to hear what you think.
Well, first off, I hate Trump and I wish he would just die. But I don't care if they prosecute him. I hope they get him on a whole bunch of different stuff. This case just seems so ridiculous. Like that this is the one, you know, and if this was, like you were saying, like they're stacking indictments, you know, on several different things and stuff like that is what they're trying to do. Like if this was one more on the pile and that, you know, it was going to be a footnote in a larger trial. I mean, because really, like when you start looking at things like, you know, the stuff that happened in Georgia, the Find Me 2,000 votes thing,
right?
Like that's way more serious.
And and grand jury has recommended indictments for that. I was going to get to that later. Like, I think that one's a lot more nationally significant. And so if this opens the door for that to seem more plausible, like, I don't think that's a bad thing. If this is just the first thing that was solid enough that you could catch him on it and they can get it to trial, like, cool. Or they can get it to the indictment phase. Like, there's been so many other blatant crimes he's committed that aren't even close to anyone looking into them that I don't think it's a bad thing that somebody's trying to get him on something they can actually get him on. Because he's been slippery around the law for decades. This isn't like this is a recent thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing in the sense that, like, you know, he's being treated unfairly or anything like that. Like I said, by all means, take him to task on all of this stuff. But I think it's bad for the country. And I think it's bad for, like, the prospect of getting someone else in office in a couple of years here.
Why is that?
I mean, I really think this just like juices up his base and ups his support amongst like there is a certain like fatigue after he left office after January 6th that I felt from like people close to me that were big Trump supporters. And it seemed like there was a lot of consensus that it was a good time for Donald just to go away. You know, retreat to Mar-a-Lago and just be quiet and like, let's not worry about him for a while. Everybody was just tired of hearing about him. And like, I feel like this stuff has just continually like kept him in the news cycle and kept him relevant. And now, like, you know, after all of these different things, I mean, you know, he mentioned that in that statement that he put out, but like, you know, there's all the like Russia collusion stuff that didn't go anywhere. I mean, there was like,
okay, but report where Robert Mueller recommended 10 different criminal charges that should be investigated and filed, and Merrick Garland just chose to do nothing. Like, it didn't go nowhere because there was nothing. It went nowhere because people decided not to do anything about it.
Right, but like public perception on it, I think amongst people who lean right is just like, oh, this was a witch hunt, and they didn't find anything serious enough to actually do anything about it.
Yeah, and a witch hunt.
And at some point, it just seems like to them, like it seems like the deck is just continually try to stack against the deck against him, and Donald always finds a way out because he's a genius or because he's touched by the Holy Spirit or whatever you want to call it. I just don't think any of this stuff bodes well for for the country when you look at like one division. I mean, I feel like this is just the kind of crap that just like drives people apart and hyper polarizes the population. And two, like, I do not want to see him win in 2024. And right now, like, I don't know which way it's going to go. I feel like he's probably going to get the Republican nomination. And this stuff, I feel like, only helps his chances of getting in.
And so far, all of his bad press has increased his polls. Like, so that's
part is
I
true.
think what's irritating about it is, like, for regular ass people, it's like he's obviously done a bunch of bullshit, and you should be held accountable for it. But like, the way that you can be held accountable for that kind of bullshit is not in any way that's like going to feel tangible at all. It's just going to be like,
like how mobsters get picked up on by the IRS normally. Like, that's just the thing they can get them on. And they're like, well, we know what this is really about.
Yeah. And then they slam the gavel and then everyone moves on. But it's like, so, I mean, there's a possibility that this could lead towards finding other things. Maybe that's the idea. If we do this, it just kind of
I think that is the
opens
idea.
The doors
just trying to show that he's not untouchable.
Yeah, and it can look in the doors to look at every aspect of his life and poke around every corner, and maybe that's what the hope is. Yeah, maybe more so.
I mean, holding them back now.
I mean, they have his taxes. They have plenty, and that, I think that's what's so frustrating about it is it's like it feels like not. I get that everyone should be held accountable and everyone should be held to the same standard. I want this guy to roast. I don't have any. I don't care what happens to him in the least. But it's like, I guess to what you're saying, Casey, I'm not entirely sure which way I sway on this still. But it's like I hear what you're saying because it's like if it's gonna rile up the base, if we're not going to like, what do we want out of this? Do we want to pat ourselves on the back for holding someone accountable, or do we want? I don't know if it's what benefit is it to the population when this is basically par for the course business bullshit anyway.
I mean, I've got my hot take.
What's the hot take?
So I think it is just really an opening shot of this is a thing that we can actually get him on. Like, I'm assuming all of us would be in agreement that there's no question that Donald Trump is a criminal and committed crimes while in office, right? Regardless of this, which was technically before he got elected. Is there any disagreement there that at least on some level he's a criminal?
No, he's a criminal.
Okay, cool. So we're on the same page there. I
don't have laws in place to deal with that type of crime in a way that's helpful when politicians engage in it, is where I'm like,
is it against the law to sucked at a certain level?
But I don't buy the whole unity thing. I'm not saying I don't buy what you're saying, Casey, but like the whole, this divides the country rhetoric, like, I just don't buy that in good faith for most people because Trump's side, like, he is engaged in the absolute worst rhetoric for years and years and years. And, you know, his side, whatever you want to call them, whether it's the MAGA base or the whole Republican Party or whatever, has been incredibly racist. They have spit in the face, really, of the people that they supposedly represent. They think the left is like demons and trying to destroy the world and subhuman and a whole bunch of other things, like depending on what day you catch them on. And I think that's one of those things where the people saying, again, not you, Casey, but the people saying, oh, unity, think about the country. Like, those are the people that really just are saying, I don't care. And, I would rather let him get away with it. The same way that like Mitch McConnell was like, oh, we can't, impeach a sitting president. Like, that's just not done. You have to wait until he's out of office. Decorum. You know, when the January 6th happened, and then he's out of office, people were like, what, is it good for the country to prosecute a former president? And I'm like, yeah, because he's a traitor, like, to democracy. he is a traitor. So yes, prosecute him. I hear what I'm not quite done. Sorry. I understand what you're saying, but I'm more worried about the precedent of letting someone do all of the things that Trump did and he gets away with all of it. I think that's a really terrible warning sign for our democracy, which is already not.
You think that would be a first time for that? That would set the precedent that presidents can do illegal things and.
Well, no.
That's
this
the problem
one case,
with all this, though.
Not this one case. If this one case, though, is a stepping stone to him being indicted for interfering in a free and open election in Georgia, then I'm all about it, because that's the thing I would rather see him hang for, is the treason part. That's the part I'm actually mad about. If this is just the first time somebody gets him into a courtroom and can actually pin him down on something, cool. It sounds like we're all in agreement that this case is not the be all end all, or is not that incredible.
Right.
He sucks. We know he sucks in this area. A prosecution's not going to do a whole lot. I care way more about the prosecutions that come after it, because for years we've been in this dance back and forth of well, he's a president. You can't, president's got to be able to president, yada, yada, yada. I'd rather kick this door open and then somebody could be great. Can we prosecute Bush and Cheney for Iraq?
Yeah,
sure. Right. Why not? Get them.
Well, I think the problem on the unity side, okay, is it's not that hey, you're touching my favorite guy. It's that these ideas are applied so differently depending on who's the one doing the applying. And the most recent and ridiculous example of that was they raid Mar-a-Lago over these documents. It's weeks of oh my God, he had top secret documents. What was he doing with those? Oh, this is terrible, blah, 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 which, yeah, he shouldn't have had those. But then, Biden ends up with boxes of classified documents in his garage. And it's well,
yeah, but there's a huge difference.
Aside.
There's a huge difference in how those two different people handle that situation. If Trump had just been oh, my bad, I had some classified documents, and he turned them over immediately, it probably wouldn't have been that big a headline. People would just added it to the whole pile of stuff that Trump does that he sucks. It's crazy to talk about that as being not even a footnote in the chronology of the Trump presidency, but it wouldn't even be a footnote. It was the whole what they were, or what they ended up being, which is nuclear secrets that I think my understanding is at no point would he have been authorized to have, versus Biden stuff, which was things he would have at one point had the clearance for.
Is that for certain?
That they're nuclear secrets?
Well, that they were that different in context.
Yes. And then, there's the second part after that, which is they resisted the government for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that's why they sent a raid, versus immediately calling the government and being hi, we found this stuff. We're not going to touch it until the National Records or FBI or whoever comes to get it. Those are big differences. Fighting back against the government and resisting that type of thing, and having worse documents. And we don't know about the worst documents part. I guess neither you or I can know for certain. But we know the way he handled it was worse. I mean, there's absolutely no question.
That's fair.
So I think, to me, yes, it is a giant difference. It's the difference of people who have some accountability. I'm not saying the Democrats are amazing at accountability. I'm just saying if you're comparing the two, I don't think there's much of a comparison, because some Democrats occasionally are held accountable for some stuff, which to me seems like it sucks, but great. I'm glad we have that, I guess. But it's just such a huge difference. And of course the Republicans they've tried to spin it as they're the same thing. They're just, the Democrats are a bunch of hypocrites. And I really don't think it is the same. The original mistake, crime, whatever you want to call it, might be, but all the handling of it after that and the semblance of accountability, I think there's massive differences.
I feel like when it comes to everything that's going on, and I agree with prosecuting someone if there's for whatever reason at any time. But in this situation,
wow, any reason at any time. What a narc.
Well, for good reason.
Sam was cool.
I just don't. You know what I mean. So
I know.
I think where I still on the fence about this is because of who he is and what he's gotten away with over and over and over again. That bringing anything other than a slam dunk case is just setting everything on fire for the sake of. it's like carpet bombing an area, trying to like take out one person,
it's like trying to take Alex Jones from 1 billion to 1.4 billion that he has to pay back. Second case.
And it's a little like with the January 6th stuff where it's like, where is this going? Like if obviously prosecute the people who are, broke, if you cross that door threshold, then you should go to prison. Right. But like this just stringy logic of like, well, did he legally like overstep the boundary? I mean, we all agree that he overstepped the boundaries and, he encouraged that ridiculous behavior. It's just, all of this stuff just drags on and on and on. It keeps him like in the news cycle, and it's to this point. It's been going on since he was elected, and it doesn't go anywhere. And like that's the whole thing. Like if
maybe until
this
now
leads towards an indictment,
maybe. But every single time we say that, and that's why I feel so deflated.
This is the first time he's actually been indicted, though. Like this is different. I agree with you that like there's I think there's no chance he actually goes to prison for this, whatever. Like obviously that's not going to happen.
No.
But they got this far. This is the new watermark of like, okay, he was impeached for the first time, which that was huge news. And then he became the first president ever to get impeached a second time. Like, and now I don't know if he's the actual first to get indicted. But I mean, the first in certainly our lifetimes or anywhere in the modern era. Like Nixon resigned to avoid, I'm assuming he would have been.
Yeah.
So like, I think that is significant. It's not enough. Like, I think it is performative to a degree. Sure. What attorney general wouldn't want to like bag a former president? Obviously that's like, cool. Yeah. I'm good with that. I'm good with somebody being an egotist or something and wanting to do that. He might also care about the country. I'll take it either way. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it. I
feel like you're way more optimistic about all this.
No, I'm not that optimistic. I'm happy that we got this far. I think that's the difference. I think I agree with you on how this is going to turn out.
What do you guys think on the? Because I've heard a few people float the idea that like the Democrats don't actually want to like knock him out of the race for 2024 because they would rather run against him than a more mainstream candidate with
like Ron DeSantis, who I think is every bit as awful as Trump, but he's smarter about it. So he would avoid a lot of the bad stuff, like the stuff that Trump did that was embarrassing and people had to come up with excuses to talk around. DeSantis isn't going to make as many of those mistakes. And if people have still and already accept him after the horrible things he said and done, then like he's already in on that part. He already has like the Trump blessing of, yeah, he's kind of awful, but he's our awful guy. Yeah. And then so he just has to avoid like the porn star hush money stories and stuff, which he probably doesn't have as many of those as Trump if he has anything like that, and he's good. So yeah, that worries me a little bit. I mean, I think a lot of people were getting to the point where they were ready to just quietly move on from Trump, not just the GOP. I mean, I think they definitely were ready to, but the leaked text messages from Fox News, they seemed like they were very happy to be getting rid of him. I think there's a lot of people that would really, really like it if like he had a heart attack or something. Like that would be super convenient for them because they can mourn him as a martyr and they can just try to move on to somebody that's more mainstream palatable. Not move on like we've learned our lesson and we're not going to keep doing the fascism. Like I think right now the party is only heading in one direction and it's pretty bad. But I think enough normal people, relatively normal, more centrist people that will probably still vote Republican, they probably would have calmed back down, where over the last few years, a lot more of them have gotten dragged to the right by his incendiary rhetoric. Sorry, I feel like I'm preaching a little bit too hard right now.
Well, I think Casey, I think it's possible that they want to run against the Democrats want to run against him. I mean, we saw the way that they, basically financed MAGA Republicans in the primaries and shit like that. So it's like, I don't remember specifically which elections they were, but it was like for Senate and representatives and stuff like that. And it actually worked out in their favor. Those didn't win. So maybe they think that if they can run against him, it'll be helpful. I don't know. I think just to split the difference here a little bit when we're talking about because again, like you already pointed out, Jeremiah, we're all on the same page as far as like what to do with this. Like, I think it just comes from a disposition of like, what the outcomes, regardless of how the indictments go, like guilty, not guilty, like it doesn't feel like a slam dunk case. And if he's guilty, we're pretty much going to be in the same. I don't know what that'll mean for him being able to run for president. I don't think it's going to change the way anyone who already likes him feels about him. They'll just think that he was handed down an unfair sentence, or that, the courts were rigged, or it's going to be the same old bullshit we've always heard about him. But then if it doesn't go anywhere and he wriggles out of this one, it's like, it feels so fucking risky to take this to task when there's a good chance he'll wriggle out of it.
But that doesn't, like, him getting out of this doesn't mean he gets out of future things. Like, he
will get out of this.
Right, but
I know.
So what future
guaranteed to get out of this?
Like, why are
Georgia,
any future things
dependent
on this,
indictment? Because he's been able, the whole like decorum, you can't do this to a president or a former president thing, like that officially, that line is getting crossed with this. It already has. Whether or not that anything happens after that, I don't know that it will. I'm just saying, I think this is significant for that, because if people were unwilling to prosecute him directly after January 6th, like, what more do you need? Like, if
apparently a lot, and that's why this whole thing looks
lasted. I don't think that he's lasted this long because of decorum or anything like that. I don't know. I'm just so tired of all of this. I hate this guy. I hate this, that we're about to go back into the election cycle, and that we're faced with these two binary choices where you're forced to choose between like the mummy and Donald Trump, the absolute worst leader in the world.
Yeah, I think it's just,
on the one hand,
everyone's demoralized.
You can vote for the small government conservatives that also want to ban books from libraries and outlaw birth control.
We don't even do the small government thing really anymore.
Or you can vote for the liberal progressives who, by all chance are going to continue this war in Ukraine that, all of this, that's one of the things that's so frustrating about this is you only have these two choices and they're both so hypocritical and ridiculous.
Whoever wins, we lose.
It's hard to stomach.
It's like the Alien versus Predator motto.
Which is fair, but I think we lose a lot harder with one side than the other. I think historically.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with the defeatist part of it. That's it feels like there is nothing you can do. And I want to be very clear. I don't think this is the be all to end all. And I don't think this is incredibly significant long-term other than the one or two small things that it gets us, but I'm glad we're getting those things. So yeah, I'm not normally in an optimistic position. I guess maybe I'm pleasantly surprised that it actually got this far. And even though no part of me is thinking he's going to die in prison because of this or anything, it's not going to happen.
No, even if this all goes through, there won't be no prison sentence will follow. So
also it looks like he's losing weight. He's trying to get into fight and trim and everything. So that's a little concerning for a 70 whatever year old.
I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, it is. It's like a sit back and wait. It feels like we're watching reality TV. It's just all about everything right now is upsetting. And I think I just heard about a recent poll that was that's patriotism or hope for our country is at an all-time low amongst all people of all parties. And it's that's fucking terrible. Everyone's feeling the same shit right now for different reasons. Some people just want to say the N-word again, but you're
right. Our demons are taking over the country and they look like gay guys. People are experiencing this on different levels.
They felt patriotic until Storytime Drag Hour, and now they just have no hope for this country anymore.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
But can't solve this problem today. So I'm going to, unless anyone has a last remark, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. Last remarks.
All is lost, and you're one day closer to death.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Closing thought. That's how I feel like I've been presenting for the last 30 minutes.
Our guest this week is Andrew Corfield of the band Meliorist, which I only learned how to pronounce on this episode when talking to him because I had only ever seen it written, and apparently I pronounced it wrong all this time. He's the vocalist for Meliorist. Meliorist is a metal band from Australia. I've been a huge fan of them for quite some time. They were one of my most listened to bands last year, and I was very excited to be able to talk to them. In 2019, they put out their first album called Patterns, and then just this year, they dropped their newest album called Cascade. I've listened to that one at least 50 times at this point. I do love it, and I was communicated that in probably an awkward fanboyish way at some point. But either way, Andrew was a great person to talk to, had a lot of fun, and you should definitely check out Meliorist, Melior, what is it, IST?
Link in the description.
Yeah. But yeah, so Casey, you can promote our Discord. You have that unlocked.
We have a Discord. There's a link tree on our Instagram profile, and you should join. And if you like the show, leave us a review, something nice, something that will inflate our egos. And that in mind, enjoy our conversation with Andy.
Hey, everybody. We are back with our guest, Andrew. Andrew, what's going on, man?
Hey, man. How are you? I'm doing good. Thanks.
Good. Dude. So, Andrew, first of all, super excited to talk to you. Huge fan of Meliorist. I'm assuming I'm saying that right. I've never heard anybody say it before. I just read it and go for it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, hey. Yeah, I kind of, when people first try and say it, I generally try and recommend they just say it as fast as they can, because it tends to come out a little bit better. So if you just say it as fast as you can and slam the whole word together, it tends to work out pretty good. It's actually said Meliorist.
Meliorist.
Yeah.
That's changes. It's so funny when you only see word, because I mean that happens in just generally life anyway, where you've only ever I remember when I realized epitome was not pronounced epitome, and you look like
yeah.
I think that's one that I think that's an experience a lot of people go through at some point in their life, but
you feel like a total goose, right?
But yeah, so I'll just start this off by blowing a little bit of smoke up your ass. So last year, Meliorist, nailed it. Was a top 5 for me for Spotify, and with your guys' new album out this year, that's certainly going to make the top 5 again. I've been listening to it quite a bit. I think it's a fantastic follow up. I absolutely love it.
Cheers! Thank you so much. That's very kind.
Yeah, man. So I also think it's worth noting and pointing out that it seems like incidentally or accidentally, we have had a lot of people from Australia on this podcast. And I would like to ask if you all know each other, but I'm guessing you don't. I guess we just keep gravitating towards people in Australia. And it seems like there's always some fun overlap between evangelicalism between the United States and Australia. For some reason, being on opposite sides of the world, they enjoy copying each other here and there on the worst.
A lot of bad parents on both sides.
Look, I think we as with a lot of culture, we like copying a lot of the stuff you guys do, right? So there's a lot of parallel and a lot of overlap.
But so Andrew, let's kind of dive into your story a little bit. Where it sounds like you grew up in Australia, but I know that is probably as helpful as saying you grew up in America, as that probably doesn't explain a ton.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Queensland, Australia, and grew up very much, I guess, rooted in the church, and started out not so much in evangelical circles, but a little bit more closed off, especially in that family unit dynamic level. In I guess what you guys probably have similar over there is the Brethren Church. So grew up in that for the first 7 odd years of my life, and then thankfully, I guess to some extent, moved away from that a little bit into more evangelical circles, which at the time was a little bit more, I guess, freeing to some extent. But yeah, I guess as you guys would know, it's there's still a lot of rules and programming that go along with all of that stuff. Hey,
programming. Yeah, that's a solid word for it.
What's the Brethren? What's Are they like a Christian offshoot, or are they like a Jehovah's Witness offshoot, or?
Yeah, and look, I'm probably not the best authority to speak on the matter, right? Like I was 7 by the time that we moved out of it, but you've definitely got like a more hardlined sect version of it, which is, I guess, more culty. And then you've got an open version of that that's a little bit more lax with rules. But for, I guess, the average punter, it's still very strict.
Dude, okay, so here, if you go to like Appalachia and you find a church like that, like the ongoing joke, and it's because it's true, is they have like rattlesnakes that they pick up and they dance around with, as a show of faith in God that, he's not going to let it bite him and stuff.
Sure. Yeah,
you guys, you ever play jump rope with like a King Bram?
With rattlesnakes? Hey, our snakes, that's impressive. No, nothing so much like that. More, I would say, I guess if you're familiar with Presbyterian or very fundamentalist type theology, very more strict in terms of Puritanism. Everything is from the devil, right?
So it's kind of like a real reserved, legalistic.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Your side.
Yep.
So, brethren, it's like the Plymouth Brethren is what I'm familiar with. And they were like, I think that was, well, I know it had a big, like in California, there was like, it saw like a shitload of growth.
Right.
Honestly, I don't know when. Maybe that was like a precursor to like Jesus movement type stuff. Speaking of Jesus movement, there apparently is some movie coming out about the whole thing that looks pretty underwhelming. But anyway,
historically, Californians just can't wait to like give their money and their wife to some like grifter. Why you guys got to do that? Knock it off.
Yeah, it's definitely the right place to. If you have a cult leader mentality, that's definitely the place to go, because all you have to do is just find some rocky cliff, and you can expect people to already be waiting there to give their life to somebody they know nothing about.
Open up a day spa.
Yeah,
you're right.
Catherine Crick,
Jared Leto.
Yeah, Jared Leto. Oh, he would be a really good cult leader, actually.
Well,
that's like the thing.
Some say that's a thing,
he
man.
supposedly has like a group.
Boy. Well, that definitely sucks the fun out of it. It sucks the fun of it when he's actually taking advantage of people. But yeah, the Plymouth Brethren, I know that was big in California, but I know that they were also huge on like end times shit. I know the end times anxiety sets in from a young age because usually definitely. Around 5 or 6, you start being told that your entire family might poof away into thin air and you'll just be stranded there having to eat what's left in the fridge until you eventually die of starvation. And
because you didn't mean it when you got saved when you were 4.
Did you was there a heavy emphasis on that with Open Brethren?
I feel like that came more through even so as we moved into evangelical circles. So I'm not too sure if it's the same over there in the States, but yeah, definitely a big part of teenage life was, thinking about these, which you look back on now and it's just so bizarre and so so abstract, right? Like in terms of like what the normal everyday person would be thinking about and worrying about. It's so far removed from that, and I think especially for a teenager to be kind of just thinking about such concepts, it's so weird.
It really is.
It's not healthy.
It's certainly unhealthy. It gives like a high level of anxiety at a young age, especially when it does set in 5, 6, 7, 8. And then just to continue thinking about that, it is. But I love thinking about like how other people have gone their entire life without pondering it once.
Yeah.
And that it does sound, it's like, it feels strange to have conversations with people who have like such a disconnect from your experience. It's like when it's that disconnected and you're like, that's a normal childhood. But growing up, we felt like ours was normal and they were all fucked. Like they were lost. And it just
very, very us versus them mentality, right? Like you have that just absolutely drilled into you from, as you said, like 7 years old. You're just you're thinking of it's us versus them. Yeah.
I remember explaining to my youth pastor how the non-Christian kids I was hanging out with was because, I was witnessing to them also, and they were good people. It's like you had to justify all of your relationships with people outside of your immediate circle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spread the gospel, but don't contaminate yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Be in the world, but not of the world.
There it is.
Which means have friends, but not really.
Yeah. Authentic relationships are off the table for most people.
That's it. You're always masking. You've always got this, ulterior motive, or what feels like an ulterior motive to you as a kid, but really you just want to be somebody's fucking friend.
Yeah. You're plagued with that guilt. You're like, I have this motivation and I feel guilty, so I'm going to do it. And it really does suck the life out of just being friends with people and really
absolutely.
just living in the moment. Because I remember every time I was in a moment where I was like, well, this feels like a teachable moment, or, well, my friends want to start smoking weed or drinking, and I should probably start a conversation about why I disagree with that. And it's like the fact that they were friends with me is really shows how great they were to put up with some of
100%,
my shenanigans.
Yeah.
But
especially if you're able to have like maintained that friendship, like since I guess moving out of the church, like that always speaks volume, I think, to that person's character, that they were somewhat aware that maybe you were the person that's not had the normal upbringing.
Yeah, I was able to maintain relationships with some of them, and I just played Battlefield 2042, or whatever it was, with them the other night, and it is
awesome.
funny to think about how much things have shifted. But so you said you shifted out of Open Brethren when you were like 7. So what kind of evangelical environment did you find yourself in?
Yeah, it was technically non-denominational, right? So they weren't technically affiliated with like a specific branch, which
that's my favorite denomination.
The bag cereal of
non-denominational, right? Yeah, looking back, you kind of wonder whether that provides even less oversight and more potential for abuse to occur. But maybe that's
you're like,
can of worms.
You either don't have anyone to hold you accountable, or you just have someone to shift you to a new church after you touch a kid.
Yeah,
or you just have to find your own lawyer when someone gets molested.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we joke, we laugh. Yeah, so it was non-denominational. It had a lot of influence. You guys would probably be aware of Willow Creek over in the States. Yeah. So it had some pretty. Yeah, it's massive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it had pretty strong ties back to that, even though they weren't affiliated. Just in terms of, I guess, how they believed, the gospel should be shared through the arts and through, creativity. So I think in that respect, that's kind of, I guess that's why I felt at home, just being a creative myself. You know what I mean? There was a real, a strong push to kind of engage in music and drama and all that type of stuff.
They had a good outlet for that.
What was that? Sorry.
No, I just said they had a good outlet for all of that at that church. You were
obviously,
able to get into music and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think a lot of people that kind of stay in those circles for a long time, it's because of those outlets, right? Because of the worship band, or because you're able to kind of get up and do music and that type of stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Coming in at like 7, 8 years old, did you fall into a friend group right away? I mean, were kids cool, or did you have to kind of work your way into like their established little buddy groups and stuff like that? Like, did you feel at home there, or was it a tough transition?
I'm not sure if I've ever really thought about that too much. I think it was fairly open from memory. Hey, like there wasn't really anyone that ever, made you feel like an outsider or anything like that. So it was definitely accepting in that regards. And yeah, like there's still people that I would say to some extent, like they're probably not close friends still, but they were in that circle as well, and have probably somewhat walked away as well, and still maintained some connection with them as well. So I guess everyone's on their own journey, and we all move through it at different speeds and at different stages depending on what's happening to us at life, right? So but yeah, at the time, like coming in, definitely was able to pretty easily fit in, and yeah, so you didn't really feel like an outsider, which was kind of a nice thing because it was a big church, right? And I think that's probably how those big churches operate to some extent, is that they're very inviting and they make you feel accepted and belonged.
Yeah, they have, and then a lot of times the theatrics and the music. It's always well done.
It's always the light show, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's well orchestrated. They usually pull a lot of talent. Like, it's hard to knock the talent of people who are invested and involved in these. I mean, honestly, from every aspect of it, like even if you don't love their mission statement, those organizations run always quite well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty well-oiled machines.
Absolutely. Like you think of something like, like the mega churches, the amount of volunteers that they have to organize just to simply pull off a Sunday service.
It almost makes the free labor not worth it.
Yeah, you're talking about, hundreds, if not thousands of people that are volunteering free labor, like you just said. Yeah.
It's so great. It's so funny because there are a couple times in life where you can think of like one or two people trying to help you with something and you just want to rip your hair out and say you'll do it yourself. And you have like 500 people begging to be able to like wash a dish and put it somewhere when they're done with it. You're like, yeah. And so they can say that they helped out. You're like, oh God.
And all with their own ideas of like how you could do it better.
Yeah. Innovation, right?
It's so funny.
What about school? Where did you go to like a public school there, or that might be a totally different way of doing things in Australia. I don't know.
I went to an Anglican school. So like over here, we've got the public system, and then we've got like full, this is probably going to sound maybe a little bit weird, but a full private school is typically like a Catholic private school. So like normally charging a lot of money, right? And then I guess the Anglican system is kind of like, represented as maybe like a little bit more of a better education, and being a private school, you still have to pay to go, but it's nowhere near as expensive as like an actual Catholic private school. So I went to an Anglican private school essentially.
So it's like public, Anglican private, Catholic private is like the hierarchy.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to understand it. Like I'm sure somebody somewhere, hopefully not listening to this, is going to be upset by that definition.
Public school is just like a penal colony.
No, absolutely not. Like it's a silly differentiation, right? Like you can definitely get just as good of a education going to a public system. Like I'm going to be sending my kids to public school 100%.
Yeah, I was homeschooled for most of my life. And I've been asked so many times, like, oh, would you consider homeschooling your kids? And I'm like, of course I wouldn't. I would not make that decision.
Wouldn't even cross your mind.
But
it
now
does create like a weird hierarchy, though. Like you were homeschooled, you went to Anglican. I was a full Christian school, and
I forgot. So yeah, the full Christian schools. How could I forget those?
It does make me uncomfortable that I'm, better than you guys. I don't know.
You're more holy.
I have to live with that discomfort,
We're definitely not equally yoked on this podcast. That's for sure.
If you guys have any questions for me, though, like fire them off. I love to help.
What was, I guess, what was the craziest thing looking back about going to a Christian? Was it considered a Christian private school? Is that how?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it had no business being a school. No. It had like one qualified teacher in the whole place. But
oh wow.
It's like the whole system is set up if anybody ever questions the amount of freedom one has in the United States, just look at private Christian schools.
Right. That's like prime
Zero
example.
Oversight.
Like my school, so it was like this curriculum that was kind of like set up so that you could be a homeschooler and use the same books and stuff, but we just did it all in a big room together. But they were insane. I mean, like by today's standards, just totally insane. Like when we were learning about, in the history books, because you pretty much just learn like Christian history and then American history, because the rest of the world doesn't matter, And
American history is very Christian for these places too. It's a very Christianized version of American history.
Yeah.
Like when we learned about the Civil War and the Confederacy, like they spent a decent amount of time explaining like what good Christian men like Stonewall Jackson and General Lee were, and how there was like these wonderful revivals that happened in the Confederate camps.
Right.
Just absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
Just changing the whole perspective of actual history.
Yeah. That actually makes me wonder, does anything similar happen in Christianity in Australia? Is there like a Christian nationalist type of way of looking at history in Australia, or is religion significantly less not even necessarily less intertwined, but do people kind of force it to be intertwined from within any Christian environments, or does that not come up a lot?
Yeah, I think, look, it's kind of I think it depends on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go. So that the simple answer I think that I could give there would be yes. I'm just not sure if everybody would be explicitly aware of how that like outworks itself in the different systems and things like that. So yeah, and I'm, to be honest, I'm probably not the best person to kind of go into detail about it either. Yeah. I'll stuff it up and say the wrong thing.
It's tough because, like, I don't know, there's such an effort here, and I'm sure it exists there too, to like sterilize, like white American history, in relation to like what we did to the Native Americans and stuff.
Sure.
And I'm sure that's happens there as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like we've got a very, and I don't know enough about American history, right? But our, Australian history is very marred in terms of what I guess the occupying settlers did to the indigenous population, and how that was then really not told at all throughout, history in school. So you just don't really grow up knowing what's actually happened to the indigenous population. And then, it's really just becoming more kind of, it's getting a lot of traction now, and which is a good thing, right? Like people deserve to be seen, people deserve to be acknowledged and recognized.
Yeah, it feels like that's happening a lot. Like I know that there's been a handful of instances in Canada where that's been brought to the forefront of conversations with just how bad things were for like their re-education camps. And then same here. I mean, grew up with the same thing. It was just like, we wouldn't have had to kill the Native Americans if they just left us alone. Like, what were we supposed to do? Not defend ourselves? That's an American right. It's like, of course, I'm being a little facetious, but it was very much downplayed how awful it was. And then I don't recall learning the actual numbers either. When you hear like the number of people who were killed or genocided, you're just like, it's really fucking phenomenal to hear. Like, I mean, this is a big country, and it was full of plenty of people before we got here, and that's so wild. It like, but I do feel like it's definitely been in the past couple decades where like, oh, that's definitely more of a conversation. Sometimes I do wonder how much of it was like happening outside of the circles I grew up in, and I was just kind of sheltered from that anyway.
Because you're in the circles. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I Christian nationalism's a real fun thing that I know is peeking its head in Australia as well as the United States. So I figured there's got to be people trying to say that their history is very Christian and actually was founded on these ideals, because that's generally the way to try to convince people that you're right.
Yeah.
Did you go to school with a lot of the same people that you went to church with?
No, I think the good thing about being in like an Anglican school is really it's I guess for a lot of the parents, like when they're thinking of that 3-tier system, it's like, how can I provide the best education for my kid at the most affordable price? So you're going to school with kids that aren't Christians, which was probably one of the best things for me, right? Is that I was getting exposed to different worldviews and people that were normal in comparison to what I had sort of experienced for the first 13 years of my life.
It's funny because that tier system sounds fairly well established, and it seems a little different or strange. But then I'm like, I guess Catholic schools kind of do the same thing everywhere, because I know countless kids who went to Catholic school that are very irreligious and were while they were there and just thought the rules were dumb, and they followed the basics of the rules, usually tried to push against them, and then didn't think twice about it after they graduated high school. Is that I'm similar?
That's 100% how it is with Catholic schools over here as well. And I think it comes down to, for whatever reason, without going into the financials, they're able to attract really good teachers and pay teachers really good wages, right? So they get the best teachers, or arguably, that's kind of how it's perceived, is that they have the best teaching staff, and that's why
yeah, it has nothing to do with the fact that the families,
too.
Yeah, the families have so much money that they can afford to. It's like wealth, and how it's tied to education has some pretty fun results when you take a good look at those numbers too. If you're spending $100,000 a year to send your kid to a private Christian school, you're probably putting a heavy emphasis on education in your family.
Yeah,
it's not the sell they think it is. Well, apparently it is, because it's lucrative enough, but.
Nobody's a devout Catholic.
Well, is that fair to say? Look, I didn't grow up Catholic, but that seems to be the way that they roll, right? And sorry for anyone that is listening that's devout Catholic, but seems to be if you're gonna be one of them, be Catholic, because you can just say some Hail Marys and repent.
Yeah, mosey in, mosey out. They have a beer tent.
That's it.
It's definitely more of a party, community group sort of atmosphere.
Yeah.
If you are a devout Catholic, like, come on, bud.
You're probably drinking, probably having a whiskey after church.
Yeah. I mean, let's not knock confession, right? I feel like that helps keep people in, because they're like, oh, I can walk into this box, say all my deepest, darkest secrets, and this guy's confined to keep this a total secret or lose his job. Like, they're the only priests are like the only people who can't even be like subpoenaed.
It's kind of like therapists before maybe mainline therapy took off, right?
Yeah, it's like therapy with bad advice.
Like a terrible therapist.
Terrible therapist.
It's like a therapist that's going to give you bad advice.
Yeah, and it's never gonna actually call you out on your shit. They're just gonna take a completely neutral, passive role and say, I don't know what they're going to say.
Chant the magic words.
Yeah, chant the magic words, exactly. Yeah.
That's funny.
Were you devout? I mean, were you into it as a kid?
Yeah, I was, man. Hey, I was, I can't remember if I've said this to you guys already, but I was that, we called them super Spiros. Do you guys use this term? Yeah, super spiritual.
Okay.
So you guys have the best slang.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Like, it's unmatched. I mean, the British, they do all right, but like nobody beats the Australian for like slang terms.
Yeah, so I wasn't deep, hey. I was fully, I was converted, had drunk the Kool-Aid. Yeah, I was getting raptured, man. I was getting raptured.
Yeah.
When did you get like saved?
Oh, like 5? Yeah,
nice.
I've got this memory of saying the prayer for the first time at around 5. So, yeah, and I guess that just with how you can't really put it any other way, right? But if you remember that at 5, like obviously there was some pretty heavy indoctrination going on.
Yeah, that's about the age I was. I couldn't have been older than 5. All right, let's talk baptisms. Were you baptized, and what style of baptism did you undergo?
Yeah, I think. I was. I do remember it. I can't remember how old I was though. I think I was around 15 from memory. So kind of mid-teen years, because I think there was this kind of idea that if you did it too young, you didn't mean it. I'm not sure if you guys experienced this, but you had to you had to mean it, and so in order for it to mean something, you had to be old enough to understand what it meant. And so you had to pick the right age to do it at, is kind of how I remember it being.
You can get 15, saved at 5, but you don't understand it enough until you're in your teens. It's no one's seeing the disconnect in that environment, but...
Exactly.
Yeah. As a second grader, I had really reasoned out my relationship with the universe,
Yeah. My view on end times was completely formed by 2.
I was ready to sign the doctrinal statement.
Yeah. So I got baptized at around 15. Full immersion, full dunk. The whole show, kit and caboodle.
Was it like in the church, in a baptismal? You have baptism Sunday.
Yeah, we had a tank. We had a tank.
There. It's too dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I remember doing river ones as a kid. Like the Brethren Church did river ones, is what I remember.
That makes sense to me.
Exactly. Like it kind of gives you an idea of that whole thing. But the evangelical church was definitely the whole tank. Sunday, big screens, so everybody could see the person coming up and the water droplets dropping off their face. Yeah.
Like Christian I always say, baptisms are the Christian wet t-shirt contests. Yep.
That's it. Yeah.
A jinx.
I actually don't. Casey, have we? I don't know if we've disclosed our baptisms. Did you have a baptism too?
Yeah, we had the tub up on up behind the pulpit and stuff.
Oh, it wasn't built into the stage?
Oh, you guys were poor.
It was like in the wall. Like there was a thing that came up, and then it was like a half aquarium.
Okay. It
was like an aquarium, but for turtles.
Glass? Are we talking glass here?
There was a little bit of glass down. You could see into the water a little ways. Yeah.
Nice.
That's like a glass bottom boat sideways,
like the penguin enclosure at the zoo.
Yeah.
I'm sure if it ever became more mainstream, then there's definitely a market there for tank shopping, right? For the mega churches. Like, why is there no display rooms full of baptismal tanks? You can just go shopping.
What if we did like a TV, make a reality show out of it? It's like tanked, like the aquarium show, but it's mega church baptismals.
Oh, there's an idea there. Could be.
They like customize them to the local, you go into Wendy's in Kansas City and it's all decked out in like Jayhawk gear. Like they kind of do the same thing, but with like local community. Like here, it's going to have like a mural on the wall of like oil rigs and cattle behind it.
It's like properly fitted with LEDs.
Are there any TV shows like that where not so much reality, but like an Office, like The Office style spin-off where it's kind of that breaking the fourth wall? I feel like someone should do something on that with the mega churches. That would be a good show. I'd watch that.
The only one I can think of is Righteous Gemstones.
Yeah,
which I haven't seen it.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's not Office style. Like it's not like Office style where it's like interviewing the employees kind of thing. But Righteous Gemstones is like the it's Danny McBride and John Goodman. Yeah, John Goodman's like a mega church pastor, and he's got like a bunch of fail kids that are all vying for his role as pastor when he retires. It's really good.
Too funny. I'll have to check it out.
My baptism was in a pool. We did a summer little pool party, but we did the baptisms at the same time.
Wait, an above ground pool or in ground?
It was. We had some wealthy people at our church with the in ground pools, so we had we had the good stuff.
I was so ready to call you trash.
Yeah. Baptisms are a funny thing because you do play it up. Like, there is a lot of emotion built up around it, right? You're like, if I do this too young, what if I don't mean it? And I remember having that feeling like maybe it wasn't like, what if it's not real? You can't get re-baptized, so I can't just do this again later. I can't do this again later.
If you get rebaptized, does the first baptism even count? Like, what happens?
And none of the ones ever count again afterwards. Or that one. It's like the second one cancels out all baptisms indefinitely. It's a mathematical equation. I couldn't write it out on paper, but I'm sure someone could help us out with it.
That's so good.
Now, okay, so the favorite lesson topic of everyone ever that grew up in this environment is like purity culture stuff.
Yeah.
Is there heavy emphasis on that, like sexual purity and stuff in your church?
Yeah, I think probably the nominal amount. I think I had a slightly different experience just from that brethren influence, kind of in early childhood. So yeah, just for me personally, absolutely, it was just this weird topic that unfortunately really fucked with my head as a teenager. So yeah, it was definitely a huge topic.
It tends to do that. That one really bores its way into your skull. Remember, did you guys ever play Turok 2 Seeds of Evil?
No, I haven't personally.
No, well, no. It was an N64 game, and there was this gun in it called the cerebral bore, and you would fire it off, and it would launch into people's heads and just drill around in there, and their gray matter would shoot out. And it was, of course, all polygonal and but seemed graphic at the time, and that's what I think of purity culture generally doing to people.
Absolutely. Like as just to give you guys like an example of what I mean, like of how much more strict it was for me personally. I couldn't go to a school disco when I was 7, and the reason behind it, so we're talking. The reason behind it was due to dancing is sexual and it leads to sin, right? So and we're in the 90s here. I'm talking about the 90s, and this is like strictly 1950s kind of like footloose kind of thinking. So that's footloose. That's
oh my God. You said 7?
Yeah, and I was aware of the reasoning as well. So that's probably the saddest part. Like I've got daughters now. I took my daughter to her first disco when she was I think just starting, we call it prep over here, which is like just the grade before grade 1. So she went to her first prep disco, and I remember taking her to that and just being like, just this overwhelming feeling of joy. Like it's so innocent and so pure to see your kid enjoying that.
Yeah.
And then also, I guess, struck with the stark realization of how fucked up it is to think that your kid shouldn't attend something like this.
For real, man. My kids are 5 and 7, and I'm like, my 7-year-old, they're doing this little dance, like a masquerade party style dance.
Yeah.
I'm like, despite talking to random strangers on the internet for the past couple of years, hate going outside of my bubble and talking to people. So the idea of doing this sounds awful to me, but I am excited about bringing, like, it's like there's an excitement to see her in that element and to bring her. But
absolutely.
Now my kids are at that age where I have to go outside and do stuff and meet other kids' parents.
For me, man, it's been really healing having my own kids, right? Because you're able to, you're not experiencing your own childhood through theirs, but you're able to, I guess, provide obviously a more nurturing environment that's, it does heal some of those wounds. So, yeah. look forward to all those opportunities because they're worth it.
It really makes you. It puts your upbringing, like it juxtaposes your upbringing, because you go so long without thinking about it and its impact on you in some ways. Like even though you get bothered by it and it pops into your head a lot or at random times, like when you start raising kids is when you start being like, oh, this isn't just like a goof. It's not just a goofy memory. Like some of that really is fucked up, and the idea of doing that as a parent or treating my kids like that or telling them that feels so awful. Like it's hard to imagine teaching my kids some of the things that I was taught. And the irony being that my parents were like so convinced of it that they were like, I'm doing the best thing possible for my kid.
Right.
So I'm sympathetic towards that and their, nurturing spirit as parents, or it's like they wanted to take care of their kids in the same way, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to hold up when you look at the outcomes.
It doesn't hold up. Yeah, you're 100% right. But I think that's where you can start to understand a little bit of like the cycle of trauma, right? Is that they would have had similar, if not maybe more extreme situations to some extent, with potentially why they've then imprinted this upon you. In a lot of instances, right? So like this, the good thing is that you're able to, I guess, break that cycle, right, by not imprinting it upon your children. But for a lot of people, it's just a cycle. They get stuck in this trauma cycle and they're repeating what's been repeated upon them.
Mm-hmm. And I think like there's something we talked about quite a bit is that like there has to be like a huge amount of peer pressure on parents in that environment. Like, when you're getting hit from all sides with those kind of messages, like, do you want to be the only parent in the church that lets their kid go to prom and dance and stuff like that? Like, you're going to be the only parent that like gives their kid a condom and says, hey, if something does happen, just be safe about it or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to be that person in the group. And like, I don't know. It's one thing when it's something that you have like strong feelings about and you feel like you've really mapped out what you think about something in particular. But, if you're just a parent in that environment and dancing comes up and maybe it's not something that you really have a strong opinion about, maybe you're like, I don't know, but let's just err on the side of safety and say, don't go. But it is irritating, like as an older person, like thinking about things that should have been fun, but that they just like sucked the fun out of it. Like like assigned all this like unnecessary weight to it and just made it like go from something that should have been a fun memory to like something that was just like full of anxiety and guilt.
Yeah. Oof. The anxiety and the guilt. Yeah. They're the big ones, right?
Andrew, you mentioned being like you're 7 and you're aware of the reason you can't go to this dance. And the feelings of like that I feel like people carry that on. Like, did that disrupt your ability to even like have any conversations with your parents about like your relationships, like as a teenager? I remember that being so hard for me. I had to pretend like I was never interested in anybody because it made me so uncomfortable to think about that topic.
I think it naturally breeds. You feel like you're living a double life, right? Which then just perpetuates that feeling of, you think it's justified guilt, but in I guess strictly psychological terms, it's unjustified guilt, and it's just perpetuating this feeling of shame, right? That there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. It's obvious that you were into this through into high school. At what point did it start unraveling for you? At what point did you start disconnecting from it?
Not for a while, man. I then went to.
You're in good company.
I guess you guys would call it, Bible college or seminary over there. So it wasn't full. It wasn't full seminary, but yeah, I was at one point, studying theology and thinking of being a pastor and all of that. So
really,
did a trip to Israel. So went and saw a bunch of sites, had a great time. Also did a trip to Turkey, and I guess saw a lot of the New Testament sites as well. So yeah, I guess there was, I would say, probably around 25 until things really started to kind of unravel for me in sense of this isn't feeling right, and like this is not who I am deep down. Like there's something fake in a lot of this.
What were your before we get to that exit point, what were some, like, if you remember, some main points of like passions regarding theology? Because I feel like everyone Christians nerd out on certain things, and I got a biblical studies degree from an evangelical university, so
Nice.
I understand those conversations with other people who are studying to be pastors, the theology majors, the Christian dorks, if you will. And were you in a lane? Was there something that you liked to talk about, or if you could force into a conversation, you would find your way to do it, as much as you might regret having to air that out?
I don't remember specifically having like a slant towards like a niche topic so much. I remember I love words in general, obviously, like being a vocalist, writing lyrics, right? Like I've got this probably maybe a predisposition towards words. So I've always enjoyed understanding or having explained to me, like, the root words. So I had a professor that was teaching Greek, and he was great because I would love his lessons and just breaking down like the New Testament Greek of what words actually meant. And it just felt like it, at the time, felt like it kind of brought things to life more. I was terrible at Greek. I was no good at it, but just having
share your pain there. I had to take a few semesters of it, and I squeaked by with a C. It just exponentially got worse as you're in your like third semester. You're like, I'll
admit, I quit. I pulled out. Yeah. I quit. I couldn't hack it. It was not a.
But did you ever find
the
yourself
term original Greek just makes the rage well up in me?
That's what I was just going to ask him.
I think it's more anxiety.
Maybe I'm having a heart attack. I don't know.
I could think of a couple conversations where I said, "Well, in the original Greek, did you ever do that as well? Can you?"
Did you know? I don't think I didn't do that because I couldn't do that. I wasn't smart enough to be able. Well, maybe not smart enough, but I didn't put the effort in to learn it, right? So I think definitely, end times, like the growing up evangelical, right? You've got pre, post, and amillennial. So going into the nuances and debating where you stand on that, and who's right and who's wrong, and all of those types of conversations were always fun, in quotation marks, right?
And it's so funny because it's like
friendships.
Talking about that stuff, like having hour-long conversations, whether you're like pre-trib, post-trib, millennial, pre-millennial, post-millennial, and you get into it, and then you're like, you realize that you were just playing Dungeons and Dragons, basically. Like, you spent hours having conversations about something that doesn't exist.
Oh, that is so funny.
Was your entire personality.
Yeah, the core of your being, right? Like you are 100% raptured up in this topic.
Just like roll your 42-sided die and like, oh, behold the pale horse.
The four horsemen of the apocalypse are upon us.
So I think going to, that was kind of very much in the evangelical circles, obviously the Left Behind series and the Left Behind books were a big thing when I was a teenager, and just getting we all read them. I think also, so that was a huge influence, and even from my parents, that was like a big influence from things that they were interested in. So that fed down to me. I think what kind of gave it a fresh perspective when I got to, Bible college was not such a literal interpretation, which was kind of refreshing, and looking back, almost grateful for that, right? And just kind of looking at concepts like Armageddon and what that meant within the context of the time of when it was written, and that actually coinciding with obviously what I was studying at the time, and getting to go to Turkey. I got to go to Patmos, where Revelations was
allegedly penned.
Which as I can't remember how old I was, like 23-year-old, it was sounded like a good deal at the time to be able to go on this kind of expenses paid trip to the other side of the world. Seemed like a bit of a holiday. So
did you see yourself, 23-year-old you, did you see yourself as more of a Rayford Steele or a Buck Williams type character?
Oh, do I have to answer that?
It wouldn't mean anything if you did. We recently did an episode with some friends of ours from the Boys Bible Study podcast, and we went back and watched Left Behind 2 Tribulation Force.
Tribulation Force. Was that the good one? I feel like that was one that was like... I mean,
sure, why not?
It's like Too Fast, Too Furious, right? There's a better one.
Too Fast, Too Furious.
Oh my god! Kirk Cameron is Christian Vin Diesel.
Oh my god! There's 12 of them. They get crazier as they go along. That's it.
Well, it makes sense with the scrolls and the trumpets. Like, they've got to bring the heat each movie.
The devil loves a good brass section. Dude, you should go back. You should go watch that movie. It's on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Go watch pieces of it. Oh man,
is it just a cringe fest the whole time?
Oh god, yeah. It's like stroke-inducing eye roll. It's so bad. It's hard to believe.
It's just that it's so on the nose that I guess that is par for the course for evangelicalism in most circles, where it's like, we need to spoon feed this to you because you're a moron and you'll never know anything unless I tell it to you the way it needs to be told. And the movies are basically like, instead of just like having regular human dialogue that would naturally progress the storyline, and
they're just explaining the plot.
Yeah, they just it's like it's individuals taking turns narrating the plot. Exactly. It's bad.
Yeah, every character is just like an exposition tool.
Yeah.
As you well know, I work for Mr. Carpathia. Dude, my favorite thing in Christian media that I like, it's in anything that talks about the end times at all. Like, every single one of them, they're like, well, the Bible says that we're in the end times. I mean, there's earthquakes. Every one of them. They got such a hard-on for earthquakes. They love them.
Don't forget wars and rumors of wars.
There's wars. There's rumors of wars. Like, that's the fun part. Earthquakes, less fun.
That's a good album. Wars and Rumors of Wars by The Chariot. It's a classic.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Saw them play that at Cornerstone.
Never made it over, obviously, because I was a teen and couldn't afford the flights. But yeah, you guys had. I think that's that's really the saving. Not to use that term, but incorrectly. But the saving grace of this whole upbringing is that I found heavy music through this circle at the same time. So it's like this weird. Well, I had some very odd beliefs, handed down to me, but at the same time, I've managed to, I guess, hold on to the stuff that matters, which is cool.
Which is good music.
Good
Were
music. Yeah,
you like?
100%.
How did you end up there? Were you like a Christian rock kid and then work your way in?
Not initially. So I was like probably, just a pop rock kid. Reliant K, all of that stuff.
Yeah,
and
Reliant
then
K. I just if anytime they come up, I always need to just jump in real quick and say they still rock. I really like Reliant K.
Look, I haven't given them a jam in a little while, but I'll take your word for it. We had so I've got a lot of siblings, and the closest one in age to me is about 4 years. So I've just naturally always gotten along a little bit easier with people that are a little bit older than me, just because that's sibling age range, I guess. And we had these boys, I can't remember what they called themselves, but they were like the dish hog crew. Like they were cleanup crew after youth group on a Friday night, and they were a bunch of some of the leaders, some not leaders, but they were about 4 to 6 years older than me, and they were obviously all into heavy metal or Christian heavy metal, right? So Norma Jean, just all of that stuff, and it's what got me into the scene, I guess.
Yeah, Norma, that's a big one. Norma Jean was the big one. Yeah, that's the one that like it would get because I would just listen to rock and shit like that, and occasionally like a rock band would scream for like a little bar.
Yeah.
And you're like, I would always, I want more of that.
Maybe a double kick.
Yeah, those were always blew your mind a little bit. And then Linkin Park was a big help in like hearing those like heavy vocals.
POD Southtown.
Yep, POD was a big one. So it's like all of that is like you had those glimpses, and you always like you had that desire for something heavier, but you just didn't know it existed. And then when I remember when you hear I heard Norma Jean for the first time. I was just like, oh, holy shit, this is crazy. Yeah. This is what I need, and that just that was like what opened the floodgates for me.
Yeah. What did you move on to next after Norma? Like, did you stay there long?
So no, I was like, it was like Norma Jean, like I ended up getting into like a lot of like the screamo kind of shit too. So your Emery's, your Under Oath with You're Only Chasing Safety. Dead Poetic I really liked. They're not screamo so much, but just
Molotov Cocktail, Say No More.
Yes, there it is, man. Oh God,
New Medicines
was such a fucking solid album, dude. Just a good ass emo album.
Actually, I looked them up. I don't know, probably a few years back now, just to see like what are these guys up to. Like that was such a staple of my teenage years. Like, and he had such a great voice. Like, yeah.
I don't know what happened. They just didn't carry on. I guess I feel like they really could have. And then a couple, like I remember getting really into Project 86 too, was an initial one for me. And I revisited them this past week. Actually, they put out a new single, and it's not, I don't love it, but it's not bad. And I would say their last full length album was actually really good. But yeah. And then of course you just keep going deeper down the rabbit hole. Around that time I met kids who weren't Christians too. And that's when I started getting into like, I got super into like Darkest Hour was like huge for me for a while.
Man, they're coming to Australia. I think it's this year, actually. I think they're
coming. Really?
Yeah. So I'm keen to get along to one of their shows because, huge fan.
That's cool. Oh man, I haven't seen. Last time I saw Darkest Hour, I must have been like 19 years old, and it was like a $15 show. It's.
I think they're charging about $45 a ticket, but yeah, so it's good to see.
It's funny how it's such like a small group of bands and stuff like that, but then like we were kind of like on totally different spectrums of that stuff. Because I started out like Skillet and Pillar and POD, still great, all that stuff, and then I think like the first like metalcore band that I really got into was Haste the Day.
Nice, yeah,
and Evergreen Terrace, Demon Hunter, As I Lay Dying, like and so on and so forth. August Burns Red was like a big one when Thrill Seeker came out. That was like
same. I was grade 8. And I still remember discovering it. I had this weird thing. I was probably maybe a little obsessed with music, so I don't really remember doing homework at all during high school. and, and I would my afternoons consisted of getting home. I'm not sure if you guys remember this site. It seems like we're pretty similar in age, but there was a site called Pure Volume.
Oh, fuck yeah. My shit ass high school band was on Pure Volume, and thank God it's been scrubbed from the internet. But
and it was like it was what the actual, I always saw Pure Volume as like the kids that didn't know music used MySpace, but the actual kids that knew music, you're on Pure Volume scouring that for like, rare finds, gems, upcoming bands.
Yep.
So that was just pretty much my whole, teenage years, not doing homework, was getting on Pure Volume looking for these new bands. And
they have like samples, right? Was it? They didn't have full length songs on it. Wasn't it usually like sections?
I think if you were like signed, I think if you were signed, you had like a profile type thing, which is kind of funny because it was almost the, it was almost foreshadowing Spotify in a way, like in terms of just being able to search a band and then play their music and stream it. So I just remember finding Thrill Seeker and just being absolutely wow, like what
they changed the genre with that album.
Dude, when they used to open every show with Your Little Suburbia in Ruins, and then they would end it with the seventh trumpet. It's like, it doesn't get any better. That last song would come on and those drums and it'd be like goom, 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 and the whole place would just freak out.
By the time they made it out to Australia, I think they were already onto Messengers, which was, just huge. So I don't think I've actually ever heard too much of that album actually ever played live. So that's pretty cool.
I feel like anybody who makes China cymbals owes them residuals.
Yeah. Did you ever, guys, at your church, did you ever get the like most music is bad talk?
No, I think because of the embrace of like the arts and the association to Willow Creek, and like, you can reach people for Jesus through the arts. There was a real openness to styles of music, and there wasn't really that I guess pretense put on certain styles of music being bad or evil, which is probably, once again, it's the one thing that's kind of stuck with me through the whole upbringing and since getting out of it is music.
Yeah, thankfully I didn't get that either. It was important for me to listen to Christian music, but again, like you said, that's what was so salvific about finding heavy Christian music. It was able to like satisfy that part of you that you were missing, and that plugged you into a new like it created like a Venn diagram of identities, right? You're like, now I'm into this. It's not just Christian stuff, and it's like it's Christian stuff and this, and there's a lot of overlap, but that did open me up to other things, other people, other perspectives. That was as someone who grew up homeschooled and in the church, that was something that really pulled me in a direction that allowed me to like experience something outside of my bubble for the first time.
Yeah, it's so good.
I feel like your guys' churches were like, we can reach people through music, and my community of churches was like, we'd rather not have them.
Yeah. If the Spirit's calling them, they will leave their music at the door.
Casey, what was your like, what denomination, like how would you describe it?
It was Baptist.
Okay.
It was like, my church was one thing, like they weren't that bad, but like the curriculum, the organization that put out the curriculum we used at my school was called ACE, and they were just flat out insane.
Yeah.
Like, we would go to these big meetups, with all these other Christian schools. It would be like competitions and stuff, and like it was just the dumbest bunch of rules like you've ever heard.
Was it like a tent rally but with Christian schools?
Yeah, and we'd go there and compete in things. So like, you'd have like track and field stuff that you would compete in.
Okay. Yeah.
And like they would be like, guys, you have to wear your dress slacks and your shirt tucked in and stuff until you get to the field, and then we'll have a place for you to change into your shorts. But you have to put your pants back on to walk back to the dorm. Like,
Right.
And the girls all had to wear, like, they would play volleyball and stuff, but they had to wear like culottes, which are like, it's like an enormous billowy skirt, but like fused into the middle into like huge shorts.
Pretty much just prevents any actual mobility, which is what you need when playing volleyball.
Right. Well, and then like if you dive, they're huge. So like if you dive after a volleyball, like they're like
you
Jankos.
Float down. You just float back down real slow.
Yeah, they were literally like Christian Jankos for girls.
You catch like a big breeze just blows them to the other side of the field.
That's wild.
Okay, so I think this is a fun exercise. Thinking back to, I mean, you had to have sat through years worth of sermons over the course of your life.
Yeah.
Like, is there any that stick out to you in your mind that you think like, oh man, that was a good one, or this one was insane, or what was going on with this guy? What do you remember?
I remember a couple of used to be a bit of a conference junkie. I'm not sure if you guys ever attended any either. So we had these I guess mega churches would put on these kind of annual conferences where you were supposed to get, reignited with the Holy Spirit.
Proto-Asbury revivals.
Before you went back to school and, converted your whole school. Was that get you pumped up for the school year? So there was a lot of, I think there are a lot of sermons in those, which naturally they're talking to 5,000 teenagers, right? They've got to keep them engaging. So there was a lot of talks in there that kind of stood out as being creative. But I think the one takeaway from all of that is just that, okay, like communication's a tool that can be really powerful to, you can see it positively or negatively, right? Like you can inspire people to motivate them to kind of do good things, or you can really manipulate the fuck out of people.
Yeah. It's the power of communication, man. The setting, the environment, the lighting, the music. It's like
the aircon temperature.
The temp, dude, there's so much that goes into it.
I just loved when the aircon would kick in right as the pianist would come back up to play the nice,
Yeah,
you could just put your hands out in the breeze.
Oh, the Holy Spirit's moving.
So here, I mean, there was like, we would have these weird, I don't know how they found them, but we would have like these weird like evangelists that would show up and teach for a week or something like that,
Yeah.
Some of them,
that's how some people made a living, right?
So many people, many people squeezed a living out of these churches, just like showing up and spewing nonsense. Like,
yeah, especially the so-called prophets, right? Whew, you got a prophet coming on Sunday? Get ready to give a fucking offering.
That's self-proclaimed.
I don't know if I ever saw a prophet.
You never saw a prophet?
They described themselves as prophets?
Oh, yeah, man. And if you received a prophecy, whew, you were like then... You were like, it was like getting a gold star.
Yeah. Did you ever get a prophecy?
What's that?
Did you ever get a prophecy?
Look, I think I had a handful, but they've never
I didn't
stuck.
know we were talking to a prophet right now.
Yeah, they never stuck, right? Like they've never. I don't know. It's like a daily horoscope, right?
Yeah, it's like vaguer than tarot card reading.
I needed a prophet that was like, buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I wish, man. I wish.
Instead, your prophet told you to buy Dogecoin at the wrong time.
Yeah. Don't you talk bad about Elon.
Told you to buy SHIB after it had already pumped 25%.
But okay, Andrew. So we were talking a little while ago before our little tangent here, but your exit,
rabbit hole, wasn't it?
It was. That's our thing here. Rabbit holes, which is
I love it.
why it's always, these are long form episodes constantly, despite our best efforts. Your exit. So you said around, I think you said it was like 25 ish. You start feeling like there's a disconnect. What was the, maybe one of the catalysts or stuff that you were thinking about when you started shifting?
I think it was just not feeling genuinely connected to people that, they're supposed to be friends to some extent, right? Like people saying that they're your friends, or even more than that, because you're supposed to have this, you're connected in Christ, apparently, right? So that's, to me, that sounds like a much more intimate relationship than just a friend. But yeah, I think just a lot of actions that things that transpired that never really actually married up or ever felt like that was the actual case. And it was just a matter of kind of, well, at some point in time, you've just got to start looking at evidence. And for me, I guess behavior, I think is really, coming out of what largely I now think of as like a cult mindset, is that, you can't believe what people say. You've got to assess them on their behaviors. And if their behaviors and words aren't aligning, then they're lying, and you can only take them for what they're actually doing. And in that instance, I guess it meant slowly kind of disconnecting from those circles. And it probably was a slow disconnect, you know what I mean? It wasn't like an overnight full 180. It was definitely probably a slow disconnect over 3 or so years, I think.
During that time, were you ever trying to like force it? Like, I'm starting to feel this way, but I kind of feel bad, so maybe I'll look into it. And you're like, some people go down this, like, I'm going to read all these books, or I'm going to look into this thing. Or was there anything around that time where you're like trying to hold on to it? Or is it just something that was happening and you started kind of just losing belief, I guess is probably the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, I think it felt more like the second, in terms of just a bit of, kind of disillusionment, right? Just being disillusioned with, friendships and the same, hearing the same messages over and over again, and not seeing change in myself, and not seeing change in other people. And if a big part of this is, there's a huge push around, and I guess, side note, this is why I'm very suspicious of things like, other groups that promote, I guess, a really heavy personal development kind of progression point of view in terms of becoming a better person, as a very hardline belief. Because I think there's a lot of thinking that lines up with this idea of becoming something that's just simply unattainable, and almost like an exercise in what I would probably call like mental masturbation, right? You're just like, you're just obsessing over this idea of attaining something that's not real, and it's not achievable because it's not real.
Yeah, it's what's the word is slipping my mind, and it's like it's a very common Christian word for your growth and your development, your
doing life.
Oh my God, it's gonna drive me insane because I've used it a million times. Yeah, thanks. Doing life. No, it's
doing life.
Sanctification. Gooder. The sanctification of Christian. That's the word that was used a lot. We're all being sanctified, and you're like, so that's exactly what you're talking about. It's like you're being told that your devotion to this and your desire to follow Christ is going to result in you being more and more and more and more like Christ. And then you look over time, and it just, that's obviously not the case based on their definition of Christ. Like, take aside their like, well, here's how I feel politically because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, regardless of what those people say about their politics, if you want to have a conversation with them about what they think about Christ, they're going to say that he, on a personal level, was out there like helping the poor and the widows and the orphans and making their, and that's their vernacular, even though it goes contrary to their typical political belief systems. But even for the ones that don't, it's like you're not seeing, you'll see it in rare instances, like some people pop up with faith that do beautiful, amazing things. But you don't see it consistently and commonly enough based on their belief around this concept of sanctification. And you, at some point you just have to go, so if that's not real, then what you're saying isn't true. That's not the direction, or you have to conclude that that's not the purpose, which is, I think, what also kind of what you said when you're like, it's an unattainable goal. So you could conclude that that's not the purpose, and that was never what Jesus was trying to do for you or through you. But it has to create a disconnect when you start thinking about it like you were.
Yeah, something's not adding up, right? So regardless of where you kind of end up in concluding, I guess, around the why or the purpose of I guess, behind some of these organizations, it's, things don't add up. And I think that's enough for a lot of people to start disconnecting.
Yeah. Did you experience like anything like scandal?
Yes. No,
I was going to say
preempted. Anything scandalous?
Based on what you were saying, I was like, this sounds familiar. I feel like there must be something here.
What was the full question? Sorry.
I guess, did you see anybody like, was there like any scandal involved at the church that like,
I don't think so. Like, not that I recall. I think, probably the most scandalous things was finding out that one of the kids that you thought was most devout was having, premarital sex or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, just these really
something as awful as that. That's terrible.
Oh my gosh, right? Like these normal behaviors. So I think, and who knows, right? Like maybe there were some things that I wasn't privy to as a teenager, but yeah, thankfully didn't get, I guess, caught up in anything like that.
So when you're,
I know, like a big migration point for me, like a turning point for me, like in how I looked at, in how I felt. It wasn't even like a conscious choice. It was just, it changed the way that I felt about all of it. Was that a guy that was at my church that was doing a ton of good things, like he got caught like looking at porn on one of the computers at church. Big deal, whatever, don't do it, blah blah blah. But like the way that the church handled it,
I
treated him, like it wasn't any big deal that he got, like it was understandable. Obviously they were going to do something about it, but like the way that they just like publicly crucified him, that was what made me go, this is, what is this? Like, what is the point of all of this? If it's all fake, Yeah.
It just really, I guess, reinforces that it's all for show, right?
To kind of shift this to your music a little bit, one of the reasons I reached out to you was because there was themes in your new album lyrically where I was like, so there in your first album there was a couple of times, because I had considered reaching out previously, because there was a couple of times where I'd listen and be like, that when you grow up the way we do, there's certain things that will stick out sometimes where you're like, I feel like that person knows something about what I know, and there's a connection. So what
was it on the first album? Do you remember?
I honestly don't remember. I don't remember. I would have to scour the lyrics again in order to.
It would have been Oblivion. It would have been Oblivion. There's a track called Oblivion off the first album, which is
that sounds right.
It's kind of like just this, howling at the wind lyrically.
So listening to the new album, after giving it a few listen throughs, I was like, there are so many themes here, which certainly felt to confirm my suspicions from the the original, and it really especially around, like, it wasn't the one I reached out to you about. The one I reached out to you about was the not what's the last track? What's it called again?
Incommunicado.
Incommunicado. Thank you. But the one that really stuck out to me afterwards was All I Need, which was seemed highly influenced by some of your experiences within Christianity. Was there something about your shifts or what was going on with the new album that kind of brought that to lyrically more to light in this new one versus the previous one?
Yeah, so essentially a lot had happened. I think from a more general point of view, I think I'm just at a point in my life now where I'm more comfortable just kind of talking about it in a more open fashion and ready to kind of, share my story and share some of my experiences. And I think that's the beautiful thing about music, right, is that it's such a cathartic process in a lot of ways to be able to kind of express some of the things that you've been through. So I think that's more of a, high level general kind of place that I'm coming from. And then I guess more specifically in terms of what had happened to me, is that I'd lost my son. So my wife and I had a stillborn, and
oh my God.
Yeah, he was essentially due the next week. So he was, we're all excited, had the baby room ready, and one morning she woke up and she unfortunately couldn't feel him moving anymore. So we raced off to hospital, and it was just like this, obviously probably the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me, and can probably happen to anyone, right? Like I guess the trauma of having to bury your own son. That's something that it's heavy stuff, and it really created a lot of introspection in the sense that I realized that even though I'd already disconnected from these circles, I still, the programming was still so deep and so strong within myself that I realized that, I'm now angry at a God that I don't believe in. Like, how do I come to terms with that? How do I grapple with that sort of a concept of, like, am I just angry at the sky? Like, if I now say that I don't believe in God, which is probably what I would have said after kind of disconnecting from these circles, and now I've experienced this event where I've lost my son, and now I'm feeling angry at God, does that just, it kind of really forces you to kind of dig deeper and take a more, not clinical, but, really take a more deeper look at what it is that you actually believe.
Yeah, certainly. I don't know if there's any conclusion to that. Like, is that something you're still circling around? Your belief around that, your anger?
Yeah, I think I don't think circling around so much with the anger, like, that happened actually just before we put out the first album. So it's like this really weird time because we'd already finished recording and were ready to release, and all these exciting things are about to start happening in your life, and then it kind of is feels like this big false start type thing. And so there was quite a time, and then COVID obviously happened as well. So there was a lot of time between the first album and the next one, obviously, because of some of the stuff that I had to deal with and go through in terms of being emotionally ready to kind of write music again, and a lot of writer's block, obviously, like just not being able to kind of access emotions in the same way, or even just as easy as previously maybe what I would have been able to as a writer. So I think in terms of like where I'm at now is, like I think I've come a long way in terms of dealing with the anger, right? In terms of dealing with that actual day-to-day feeling of being wronged and injustice. And in terms of spirituality, it's actually opened me back up to spirituality in a big way, which is, it's actually been a beautiful thing, because of previously to that and leaving the church, is that a lot of the things that I would associate with my intuition, is that my intuition also had a natural association with, because obviously the way that we were brought up, my intuition had a natural association with God or with the Holy Spirit. And so I ended up shutting down, like after leaving the church, I ended up shutting down a big part of myself. Like I shut down my sense of intuition, and because it was triggering feelings of, well, oh, that's not real. That's God. Like that's kind of crazy talk type thing. And so I shut that part of myself down, and I guess through this tragedy, like it's a horrendous experience, but it's actually opened me back up to, my intuition and, this part of me that I'd shut down for so long. So it's, there's some good that's come out of it, which is, not in any way, shape or form, a compensation for what I've lost, but yeah.
Was there, so you've got siblings and stuff like, I mean, where's your family at with all this stuff? Are they still a part of the church? They gone the same way?
I think for most of them, I would say they're still connected. I think, some more than others are maybe more in it than not, and others are maybe slightly more disconnected than others. I've got 5 siblings, so there's a few of them. But yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to their own personal stories as well.
Yeah,
I feel like it would be hard to go through, like being in the place you're in with that
see
stuff.
Where you're going. Yeah. Keep going.
I mean, there's even reference of comfort, like ways to communicate comfort to someone that's going through something like that. So much of it has really, that's something that I struggle with, but like somebody's lost someone or, anything. And I don't even know what to say to someone anymore.
Yeah. I think sometimes that can be the beautiful thing about family, is that, regardless of the ideology that you've kind of subscribed to growing up, is that when, a tragedy kind of befalls somebody in the family, is that there's just, there genuinely seems to be a natural urge and desire to I guess uplift and support that person, regardless of whether you agree with that lifestyle anymore. And I think that's, I think that's a really admirable thing about family in general.
Yeah, especially if you have that, when you have that kind of family, when you have that, sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm very aware that not everyone's got that, right?
Right. Yeah, man, it's hard to imagine how that would impact one's thinking, and you feel like you've had this confident split from all of it, and to have so much of that like reignited through something so awful, not just your own inquisitiveness or through a book that you read when you're like, well, now I'm interested in investigating. It's like to
shoved in your face.
Yeah. That's a lot, because then you're under normal was a bad choice of words, but under any other circumstances, you'd be mourning the loss of your son. And now, but under these circumstances, you are now like forced to come to terms with something that you thought was resolved, but wasn't at the same time. And that makes such a significant difference in the way that you would process or heal, or the areas that you would look to for the healing that you would need.
Yeah, I think it has the potential to, but at the same time, I think maybe I was really struck with just how much Western society and culture in general has a real avoidance to dealing with death or wanting to think about death. There's just an absolute, even in terms of, I guess, maybe how we treat some of our elderly once they start to get old is, ship them off to a nursing home and don't want to think about it, right? Because that's going to be me.
That part.
That's going to be me. I think the thinking is, right, that like what's happening is that's going to be me someday, and that's confronting. So I don't want to think about it. So it's easier to deal with. It's easier to deal with in that sense. And I've totally lost my train of thought. So what was the question?
Who knows at this point?
Who knows?
Do you? Okay, so you're open back up in some form or another to like spirituality. I feel like if somehow I ever ended up back in, finding my way back to that mindset in some form or other, I feel like I would be very skeptical of groups, thought leaders.
Yeah, and even before that, right? Like I think now my radar for anything cult-like, or like you said, thought leaders, people that are projecting a message, but underneath there's an ulterior motive that they're trying to either financially fleece people or, I think. I don't think that's always necessarily the motivation in these groups. I think on a large, probably more, maybe not it's not necessarily not as bad, right? But I think a lot of it's ego driven as well. It's just that sense for status and I'm somehow gaining, recognition, and that makes me feel good, right? Like serotonin, dopamine chemicals in your brain going haywire.
Yeah, for the egocentrist, it allows them to feel like they're accomplishing something or being purposeful, or it provides purpose. If you want to look at it in a more benign way, it could be worse. But if you're an egocentrist, you're like, I'm being fulfilled through having a flock, and then you can mistake that with being fulfilling a calling of some sort.
Maybe it's like just natural effect of just being in sales for my whole adult life, but like every time somebody's talking with authority, like my thought is like, what are you selling? Like, what are you selling me? And like, take the weight of spirituality out of it. You start talking to people, especially, there's a lot of guys that are really into like motivational stuff, which is fine. But they'll be like, what are you doing to better yourself right now? I mean, what books are you reading to like, make yourself a better salesman, make yourself a more effective communicator and stuff? And I'm like, I'm not going to read any of that. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to listen to it. Like the last thing in the world I want to do is go listen to some jerk off that's trying to sell me this idea that like success is just one little, flick of the wrist away from happening to you. You just need my formula. Go screw yourself.
The formula gurus, right? Productivity hacking, and that's it's really interesting, right? Because I think you can almost stay in the exact same, like even if you leave the church, you can almost stay in the exact same mindsets. It's just in more
absolutely
mainstream society, right? Like with the productivity hacking with things. I'm definitely not against personal development. I'm huge, I think personal development's really important, and strongly believe in I guess, setting goals and accomplishing things, right? But I think it's about the way that you go about that, and the mindset and the mentality.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a really good book. Sorry, I'm about to sell you a book.
I'm ready.
The irony.
I'm ready to take a dump on it.
There's a really
let me
book.
Stretch out.
I read it last year. It's called 4,000 Weeks, and it's actually by the author of The Guy. So he's a big productivity hacker nerd. Essentially, his job was to like find, he wrote about productivity hacking as his job. And this book is essentially saying it's all bullshit.
Hey, there you go.
I could read that.
I think you might thoroughly enjoy it. So give it a try.
Sell me the idea that I'm right already.
Success.
It's like the sales version of Ex-Evangelicals.
Right.
All bullshit. Let me tell you how on it's all bullshit. I love it. Man, I know we've had you here for a while. I want to compliment you another time on the new album Cascade. One of the things I love about it is like the patterns was heavier. And when some of the singles came out, I was really interested in the direction and was curious as to how it was going to play out as a full length, but like a lot more like cleaner vocals, a lot of like poppier riffs. Yeah. And I'm eating it up, man. I have this problem where I listen to like follow-up albums, second or third albums, and I'm like, I'll do this thing where I'm like, I don't think I like it as much. And I listen to it once and I don't really give it the time of day that it deserves. And then I realized like 2 or 3 years later that I really missed out because it was great. But something about like, it was like, it's for me, it's just like that right kind of shift where it's not a total divergence, but it's not just like doing the first album again. This coming out with that second album is really hard. Like, do we do what we did again? Or do we do something really like how it's such a hard, I'm critiquing people coming out with second albums as though I'm a musician and I'm a totally useless person when it comes to music. But as just a general fan, it really, I've listened to it dozens of times since it came out, and
thanks.
Your vocals on it are fucking phenomenal. I really love what you did.
Cheers. Yeah, it was a big, I guess, direction shift in terms of just soundscape in general. So Andrew writes the guitars, the other Andrew, and when he was first coming to me with some of the demos for it, it was like, I just was not ready to explore. Like, I was angry. I wanted to go heavier.
Really?
Yeah, like in terms, not angry at him. I was lost my son, and it's like, man, I've got all this rage inside of me that needs to get out, right? So it was like this really weird process of initially, is this the outlet for that? And then if I decide that this is still the outlet for that, then I guess what does that look like? And that kind of, I guess, informed some of the songs in terms of, looking at different stages of grief, because that's really what the album's trying to do, loosely, is look at the different stages of grief, and obviously thinking through, like, as a lyricist, like how do I get people to connect with some of these themes that are very universal, but they haven't had the same experience that I've had, and I still want to be able to share some of my experience, but I need to be conscious that, there's very few people are going to want to necessarily maybe listen to a whole album of that, and also wouldn't relate to it because it's not something that they've been through.
Yeah, well, it worked on me, and that's why we're having this conversation. So
good to know.
I don't know if I can I don't know if I should be holding my breath for some US shows anytime in the future, but that's a complicated move.
If you've
got not exactly close.
If you've got contacts, let us know. Let's always happy to play shows.
Well, if I
hope you can sleep in my basement.
Yeah. Have you thought about doing the church show circuit again?
Yes, that was always interesting. Hey, like, it's like, how did this band actually get on this bill?
Yeah. Just start marketing yourself as a Christian band. Connect with the right people.
We'll get Cornerstone. Right. We'll get Cornerstone back up and running.
Get you guys at Furnace Fest. Let's get you guys to Furnace Fest. That's where every it's like, God damn, Furnace Fest is like heavy music lovers mecca at this point.
Yeah.
Metalcore douche singularity.
Yeah.
Being achieved here.
Man. Well, Andrew, it's been great having you on, man. I really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Casey.
Absolutely. Where can people find you guys?
Yeah, we're on Facebook. We're also on Instagram. I think Instagram's Meliorist AU, and then on Spotify, iTunes, all of the streaming services, whatever your preference. I don't know. That's like a thing I found out recently, right? Some people are like
big prefs.
hardcore iTunes, like Apple. I didn't realize that it was a preference over which streaming service you use.
Yeah, it's kind of like these Neanderthals that have an Android phone.
Oh, come on. Most people, you mean? Fuck off.
As I wait for your little green bubble texts.
Yeah, stop. SMS texting, yeah, I'll concede, is trash on Android. That's why I stick to Instagram, but you don't check those messages like a child. So anyway, we don't need to get into this now.
Dude, thanks so much for joining us. And thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next time.